Hello everyone, it's Shannon here for Hero Arts. In today's video, we are going to use the February My Monthly Hero Kit to create this interactive rotating scene card. This card was really fun to make and I can't wait to show you the whole process. To start this card, we need an A2 panel of Pebble cardstock. It's a really pretty gray cardstock. And I've already arranged here in my MISTI a image from the included stamp set as well as a sentiment. So I'm going to ink this up in charcoal ink, which is a kind of a dark gray. I really like the tone-on-tone look here. And just stamp it onto this panel. After I stamp this, I am actually going to create a window. I'm going to cut out that opening in the archway. So I'm going to use my craft knife to do that. I start by just cutting kind of the straight edges, using the ruler here to help me get it nice and straight, and then I'll create an opening and actually switch to scissors because I just feel much more confident with scissors. But if you prefer cutting this with a craft knife, definitely continue with that. But I decided to switch up for the scissors, especially because I have that curved opening there at the top of the archway, and for me, I know scissors are easier. And then for the stairs, I just want to show you what I do. I just cut a little slit at the side of each stair to just kind of match the line of the stairs, and then I will cut the tops of the stairs out with my scissors, just cutting a little quick cut, straight cut to make those pop out really easy. So now I'm just fine tuning, cleaning up a little bit here on the side where I didn't do the best job again with that craft knife. And now I'm ready to kind of just clean it up a little bit more, and that involves a marker. I have a gray Copic marker here, and I'm just going to take the brush side of the marker and just color the edges of that cut window. That's just going to really clean it up. So if there's any parts that do look a little maybe not perfectly cleanly cut, the marker will really hide that. I'm just going to go around that whole archway as well as all the steps. And then I'll take that same marker and add a little shadow to the steps. This just adds a little bit of depth and a little bit more interest to this pretty simple card front. And that actually completes that panel. Now we're going to move on to starting to create the mechanism for this interactive card. I have a large circle here. This is from the Nesting Infinity Circles die set, and I am going to cut it out of copy paper and watercolor paper. I'm going to use the copy paper circle to help me find the center for the watercolor panel or the watercolor circle. Finding center is really important so that that circle spins kind of smoothly or evenly really inside our card base. So I folded that copy paper into fourths, marked the center, then used a little pin or a needle to kind of create a little hole inside that copy paper circle. And that little hole is what I'm going to stick my little pencil tip through and mark the center onto that watercolor circle. Now I'll just take that same needle and kind of poke the hole through that pencil mark, and now I've made a hole in the center of my watercolor circle. Now I'm going to grab a brad here. This is a mini brad. It's a little bit smaller than your typical brads. You can definitely use the larger brads if you have those. I'm just going to grab it and make sure it fits through that opening that I made in the circle, and it does, so that's great. Now I'm going to die cut a second circle, a smaller circle. This circle is about 1¼ inch wide. It just needs to be smaller than that watercolor circle. I'm going to eyeball the center, and then I will hole punch that center point out. And this circle was die cut out of heavyweight cardstock. You definitely want to use some heavyweight cardstock for this second circle. Now I'm going to feed both circles through that brad, starting with the cardstock circle. I want that circle right against the head of the brad, and then I will add the watercolor circle and close the tabs down. Now that we have that done, we're actually ready to kind of put this onto the card. So I'm going to grab my card base here. I have an A2 top folding Pebble card base, and I'm going to add some foam adhesive to our stacked circles. I'm actually only going to add it to the cardstock circle. You don't want to add any to the watercolor circle because we're actually going to remove the watercolor circle after we stick this down. So I added that foam adhesive. Now I'm going to just about ready to add it on, but I wanted to just make sure, kind of eyeball where I need to cut a notch. The notch is so it's easier to turn that circle. So I've grabbed another circle from the Nesting Infinities Circles die set and just cut a partial cut or a partial circle out of the side, and that makes a perfect notch for us to be able to spin that circle wheel. So now I'm going to hold both in place, get it lined up nicely within that notch opening, remove the backing on that foam adhesive, flip it over, and then place it down. And I'm just using a piece of tape to temporarily hold that panel and circle down while I stick it. And now I'm going to remove that panel, remove that tape, remove that panel, and then open up my brad tabs again to remove my watercolor panel. And now we're ready to do our watercoloring. So I have the Daniel Smith watercolors that were included in the kit here, and I'm going to use these colors to watercolor kind of a changing scene, a sky. So a sky that's kind of changing from cloudy sky to almost stormy looking sky, then a night sky, and then a sunset. So right now I'm obviously kind of hashing out the cloudy sky, and now I'm already moved on to the night sky. I used manganese blue hue for the cloudy sky, then moved on to Mayan dark blue for the night sky with a little bit of iridescent sapphire. And now I'm kind of mixing the two colors, mixing the manganese blue hue, which is what I used for the cloudy sky, and the Mayan dark blue to kind of transition, and that makes it almost look like a stormy sky as I'm transitioning from the blue happy sky to the night sky. And I do that with just kind of like a stormy sky. Now I'm just kind of beefing up the night sky with some more the manganese, a little bit of purple. I used the ultramarine red, which is a purple color to me. And then now I'm moving on to the sunset. Here I use Mayan yellow, rose madder permanent, as well as some permanent red deep. And I'm just kind of mixing, going back and forth and mixing this so it has a nice gradation or a nice ombre look as I transition again from the night sky to the sunset, and then the sunset colors in between each other. Now here's where it gets a little bit trickier. It's a little bit harder to transition from the sunset to the blue, happy cloudy sky. So I'm going back and forth, sometimes even picking up some of the color if it's too intense, but trying to blend these colors, these bright sunsetty colors, with that manganese blue hue. And I just kind of incorporate it with the blue a little bit, and then also add those colors, especially the rose madder and the Mayan yellow, to the clouds. Adding a little bit of that pink and yellow helps to also blend and make that transition a little bit smoother as well. I'm really a watercolor novice. I definitely don't feel like this is one of my strengths, but I enjoyed trying to paint this, and I really hope that it doesn't look too intimidating to you. I really encourage you to try and paint this. And I was surprised how well it turns out. I think sky is actually more forgiving than you would think because the colors blend, and there's really so many different types of skies. So I really encourage you to give it a try. So now that I'm done watercoloring this, I'm actually going to add some stars to my night sky. So I actually have some white Gonzai Tombi watercolor, and I'm just going to splatter it over that night sky section using a little bit of that leftover copy paper to mask off the other sky sections. Once that is dry, I'm actually ready to wrap it up. So I'm going to feed my circle back through that brad. Once I get it through, I'll then close the tabs down. Now I do want to know, I used a really large circle large circle die. You don't have to make such a large circle, and probably I would have been better off if I started with a circle that was a little bit smaller than 4 1/4, like the one I'm using, because I had to get that perfectly in the center and I didn't quite do it. But I don't think it's too noticeable that it pokes out the other side at some point. So now I'm doubling up my foam adhesive here, and I double it up simply by folding it on itself. So I have 2 layers, and I'm just going to add a little bit of that doubled foam adhesive to the corners. That's going to add a little bit of dimension so this circle spins freely. Then I'll just stick down my A2 panel. And once I get this panel lined up, I will press it down, and that is my card is complete. I'll hold up to the camera here so you can get a good look at this card in action. You can see here how I can grab that wheel through the notch and just give it a turn. And how cool is that color changing or scene changing in the window? I love it. It's so awesome. The contrast, I think, of that kind of really plain front of the card with the bright colors in the opening, I just think is really cool, very striking, and very fitting for, I think, this month's theme, this month's art theme. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you have any questions about the products I used, please check out the links below and in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.